Hey guys, so I apologize for a lack of a PowerPoint presentation, but I'm pretty much the most technologically unsavvy person you'll ever meet. So it's just me and my notes, I apologize. So my name is Noga, and I work for the ACLU of Northern California. And the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union, is an organization that protects civil liberties and civil rights that are guaranteed to you in the Constitution. And what I want to talk to you about today is your right to free speech on and off campus. Now that's a huge topic, and I'm not going to be able to cover everything, so I'm just going to try to, pick out some highlights and some things that might be particularly important to you as high school students. So, first of all, I would like to express my own free speech right by, noting the fact that today is a really important day. Big game going on today. And I would just like to say to all of you, I know this might be controversial, but go Bears. So there you go. So first of all, I want to let you know that you in California are especially lucky because you have really robust free speech rights here that other students in other states don't necessarily have. So where do these rights come from? First of all, the U.S. Constitution, in the First Amendment, guarantees your right to free speech. So that applies to every citizen in the United States. The Constitution says that Congress shall make no law that abridges the freedom of speech or the press. The First Amendment is a little bit longer than that, but that's the part that applies to free speech. And the U.S. Supreme Court has basically said that students, when they enter the schoolhouse gate, as opposed to, I don't know, now today maybe be the schoolhouse metal detector, but when students enter the schoolhouse, they don't lose those free speech rights. In California, your free speech rights are also put into the California Constitution, so that applies to everybody in California. And specifically for students, the California Education Code also protects your free speech rights while you're in school. However, all this only applies to government action. So that means that, if you go to somebody's house, you're at a private party, you say something, you don't actually have free speech rights in a private area, right? So it only means that if the government is trying to stop you from saying something, then you have free speech rights against the government. So that means that everything I'm saying today only applies to public schools in California. If you go to a private school, your rights may be totally different. Some of this may apply, but your rights are not as broad as your rights are in public school. So yay, public school. Let's see. So here's the deal. You do have very robust free speech rights, obviously, but when you're in school, the school can definitely limit what you can and cannot say. For example, the first and foremost thing is that the school can regulate the time, place, and manner of your speech. So they can tell you that there are certain hours in which you can't say certain things. They can tell you that certain areas of the school are off limits, and they can say that certain ways of expressing that speech, whether it's pamphlets that you're handing out or certain things that you cannot do while on campus. Generally, the school can't regulate your speech based on what it is that you're trying to say. You're allowed to say anything you want. But there are 4 exceptions. And those exceptions are, number 1, your speech cannot be obscene or lewd. If it is, the school can restrict you from saying what you want to say. Secondly, libel or slander. So meaning, if you say something that's untrue and that harms somebody's reputation, and if you know or if you should know that that speech is untrue, the school can restrict you from saying that. Number 3, if your speech creates an immediate danger of causing somebody, whether yourself or somebody else, to commit an unlawful act or to violate a school rule, the school can stop you from saying what you want to say too. And the 4th thing is that if your speech promotes illegal drug use, the school can restrict that speech as well. The other thing is that schools have certain duties that are imposed upon them by the California education laws that they have to create a safe environment for students. So that means that if your speech equals harassment at any point in time, the school can restrict that speech because they have to ensure a safe environment for the other students so that they're not being harassed. Okay, so now we're going to move on to some salient topics in free speech. So how many of you have used Facebook in the last month? I know I have. So social networking and the internet. Generally, if your speech is not school-related, you should be able to say whatever you want on the internet. So that means that schools can't punish students for materials on websites that you make outside of school, not during school hours, without any school facilities, and that are not school-related. So what that means is if there is any school connection, the term they use is a school nexus. So if there's any connection between your speech and the school can actually punish you. And then there's a lot of open questions, right? So if what you post on the website is related to school, or is written while you're on campus, or is using a school computer, then the school might be able to punish you for what you say. Additionally, if what you post causes any substantial disruption of school activities, or even a risk that it might cause disruption of school activities, then the school can regulate what you say and punish you. So let me give you a story as an example. There was a student in San Jose who was suspended from school because he created this Facebook group that offended one other student. And this other student went to the school and told them about this Facebook group. He created it on his home computer, and he only accessed it from home. And the school suspended him. The ACLU stepped in and argued that his speech didn't have a school nexus because he made it at home, he only accessed it at home, and it wasn't about anything related to school. And then the ACLU said, well, even if he had said the exact same thing he said in his Facebook group on campus, you still wouldn't be able to punish him because it didn't cause any substantial disruption. So in the end, his speech was protected, and his suspension was expunged, and the school let him back in. But then there's still all these questions about, when you're using the internet. Like, what if you bring a cell phone to school and you're accessing Facebook from your own cell phone, but it's during school hours? Would the school be able to punish you for what you say there? These are a lot of open-ended questions that the courts haven't necessarily decided yet. So, we just don't know what is enough yet to give the school the liberty to say this is connected to school. There is a school nexus here. The next thing that I want to talk about is cell phones and searches by the school of your cell phone. So how many of you guys bring a cell phone to school nowadays? Awesome. Be careful with that. So the school can search your cell phone. Searches are allowed, and they can look at your calls, your text messages, your photos, but with limits, okay? So a school has to have something called a reasonable suspicion based on facts that they know. It can't just be rumors, they have to be facts that the search will produce specific evidence that that school is looking for, that a particular student violated a specific law or school rule. And I know that's kind of long and complicated, but it basically means they're not supposed to go up to you and say, hey, just give me your cell phone. I feel like I might find something good on it to punish some other student for. They have to know that there are facts that if they search your cell phone, they will find something specific relating to violating a law or a school rule. Additionally, that search has to be reasonable in its scope. And the scope is determined by the student's age, gender, and that particular thing being searched for. So here's an example. There was a student, a senior in high school, whose cell phone was confiscated after he was caught talking on it during school hours. Even though the school had no reason to believe that he violated any other law or school rule other than talking on his cell phone, they still went through 3 weeks of his text messages and read through all his text messages between his friends and his family, really private communications that he had with them. The ACLU ended up writing to that school district on behalf of this student, explaining that that policy violated the Fourth Amendment and the California Constitution. And then the school had to revise its policy because that search was too broad, right? Because nothing that they looked for related to the fact that that student had talked on the phone during school hours. So a few other things that you might want to do in school to express yourself. Protests. You can definitely protest at school. However, like with other speech, the school can restrict the time, place, and manner as long as those restrictions are reasonable. Also, the school can punish you if you skip class to go to a walkout or a protest. Here's a story that some of you may have heard of. There were students who were at a school-approved rally. The school took all the students out of school and brought them to the rally, and I think it had to do with the Olympic torch or the Olympics, something related to that. And these students held up a huge sign that said, "Bong hits for Jesus." The school suspended these students because they were holding up a pro-drug banner. The students took this case all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, arguing that their banner was free speech and the school could not regulate what they were saying at this protest. But the court decided that because that event was held during normal school hours, because the school approved the students going to that event, they were actually subject to the school's rules, and the school could restrict them for a pro-drug message. So their punishment was upheld. So school newspapers. I know some people here actually just talked about school newspapers in the last segment. And your freedom of speech and press applies to both official and unofficial school newspapers. Again, the same limits apply. The school can place those same limits in terms of time, manner, and place on the school newspapers. So a story about a newspaper. There was a student who wrote an editorial in her school paper that criticized immigrants and our immigration policy. The school retracted all the copies of that paper once that editorial was printed. That case went to court, and the court decided that because that article was not likely to cause a substantial disruption, the school actually violated that student's First Amendment rights by taking away the copies of that school newspaper. Dress code. How many of you have dress code policies at school? Okay. So schools can restrict your dress. They can use dress codes and grooming rules that are necessary to prevent distraction or to promote safety. But there are limitations on what the school can say to you in terms of restricting your dress code. So for example, there can be no blanket prohibitions on all messages. They can't say, no words on your t-shirts, nothing, ever, not allowed. The regulations have to be specific so that when you read the dress code, you know exactly what is permitted. And additionally, the dress code has to be enforced evenly. So they can't permit certain messages but disallow others. For example, during an election, they can't say, okay, you can wear shirts that, for example, promote your Republican candidates but not Democratic candidates. And the school also can't prohibit only certain people from wearing certain types of items. And the last thing I want to touch on is clubs on campus. So if a public school allows any non-curricular club to meet on campus, it has to allow all non-curricular clubs to meet on campus. And this comes up a lot in issues like where students want to form gay-straight alliances on campus, and sometimes the school tries to restrict gay-straight alliances. But if there's any other non-curricular group on campus that meets during school hours using school facilities, the Gay-Straight Alliance is allowed to meet there as well. So what do I want you to take away from this whole conversation, right? First of all, you have the right to express yourself, even when you're at school. You can express your opinion on badges, buttons, armbands, bulletin boards, printed material, petitions, and school publications. But the school also has rights and duties, and therefore it can limit your speech while on campus and punish you for some of the speech you might have on campus. And the thing is that exercising your free speech rights can sometimes involve risk, and it takes a lot of courage and patience sometimes to fight with a school to stand up for your free speech rights. Even when you're acting within your right, you might have to go to court and all the way to the US Supreme Court to protect what it is that you want to say. But you're not alone, and there's organizations out there to help you if you do want to exercise your free speech rights and are not allowed to. And the ACLU obviously is a great example, but there are many others. And I've actually left in the ideas room a bunch of Know Your Rights materials from the ACLU. So feel free to pick those up. And there's a phone number in there that if anything ever happens that you think your free speech rights are being limited or restricted, there's a phone number to call to talk to somebody at the ACLU who can potentially help you, protect your free speech and exercise those rights. So thank you so much.
All right.